welcome to another episode of Pause for Payments. My name is Kristy Duncan, and I am really excited to be here with two amazing women guests from the mass transit payments industry. We've got Taya Leybman from Metrolinx, based in Toronto, and Stephanie Schrauth from Bytemark, based in New York. Welcome, Taya and Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to talk about payments in mass transit, and I've been looking forward to this discussion because we think payments is a niche market. Try payments in mass transit. It's an ultra uber niche market, a category unto itself. So one that I know for sure, and probably many others don't know a lot about, but we're going to find out today. So let's get started. You both work to facilitate payments for mass transit in large urban centers. And not everybody understands all the nuances of that. Can you share with our audience exactly what you do and what excites you about your job? Do you want to start us off, Taya?
Sure. So I'm the VP of Technology for PRESTO, and PRESTO is the fare payment system for the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, and we also serve Ottawa. So what our business does is essentially supports customers in paying for transit and also a broader range of kind of journey support and helping them kind of plan their travel, buy their travel, helping them on their journeys and post-journey. And my function, so I'm responsible for our technology strategy and also really excitingly, our modernization strategy. I've got security under me, I've got product development under me, as well as kind of architecture. And I guess the thing that excites me about it is, you know, I'm a bit of a change junkie. I get bored quite quickly, and I'm in this field where payment is changing really fast, as you all well know. Transit is changing really fast, and so there's kind of no end to the evolution of our technology and the customer experience that we're trying to provide. And I also really like the public service aspect of it and the fact that I get to work on something that I see impacting and helping my community.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Taya. Stephanie, tell us about what you do at Bytemark and why that's exciting.
So I'm the VP of Product Strategy and Marketing at Bytemark, and we are a fare payments platform for transit. So we assist the agencies in their goals of getting people onto transit. Our platform consists of mobile apps, websites, hardware integrations, trip planning, demand responsive transit, all of those things together to kind of make it into a mobility ecosystem. And I think the favorite thing about my job for me is the logic of it and the puzzle aspect. Really, it's how can our system solve your problem? And if it can't, if it doesn't have something, what can we build to do so in a way that's elegant and quick and effective? And what I like about the industry really is, I'm from California, so being environmentally friendly is really important to me. And now I live in New York, and I'm no car, so always riding public transit, and I have firsthand knowledge of exactly how important it is. So exciting to do anything I can to, help other people with that as well.
Fantastic. So many of the people in our audience have card payments experience, but perhaps fewer have experience with payments in mass transit. What would you say is unique about mass transit payments? Do you want to start us off on this, Stephanie?
Sure. So I would say there's three main things: the number of payments, the size of them, and also the type of payment method. People who ride transit usually do so twice a day at least to work and back again. And so you have a huge number of micro transactions, and they're all for relatively small amounts. A single ride ticket costs about $1. So you have a ton of small transactions. And then if you look at the data in our system, and we're not handling the cash acceptance really, so we have mostly card transactions, and 70% of them are debit, not actually credit. And so you have a huge amount of transaction fees that kind of build up pretty quickly. And so that's where features in transit like payment aggregation and fare capping and period passes really come into play, which I think are transit specific features.
Fascinating. Do you want to add anything to that, Taya?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. So the nature of it, you know, the focus on micropayments, I think, is a really interesting lens. I think the other thing that that we feel is a major difference is the fact that, so from a customer perspective, tapping to pay on transit should be the same as tapping to pay for a coffee. From an infrastructure perspective, now you hear from the tech person, we're talking about a totally different context, because if you imagine where we've come from buses riding around, many of which are not connected. We've come from underground scenarios. We don't have or haven't had historically all of the real-time kind of connectivity. And we also have no room for error, because when you're talking about supporting Toronto Transit during rush hour, just the throughput that you need to be able to support is very unforgiving. And so to accommodate for that, there's been like a big kind of highly customized ecosystem where we've got loads of control over the infrastructure and the central systems and every kind of piece of the puzzle. And it's developed really as its own beast using smart card technology. These days, with the help of the payment industry, with the help of companies like Bytemark, with the help of the new connectivity that we've got in the world, we're starting to modernize and move more towards common technologies, credit and debit cards, moving away from smart cards and towards account-based. And so we're starting to behave much more like the behavior that you see in retail, but actually making it happen behind the scenes is pretty hugely complex, I'd say.
Yeah, so interesting. We've got this holy grail for transit payments, which is fast, cheap, and secure. And I know those are often conflicting requirements. How do you balance these three payment attributes in such a high volume, high speed environment like transit? Do you want to start us off, Taya?
Sure. I mean, I guess for us, getting to fast, simple, secure, kind of, you know, the ideal in payments really relies on us developing relationships and partnerships with the payment industry. Like I said, it's kind of in transit. It's always been very proprietary. Now we're finding ourselves looking to tech companies, looking to payment brands, and starting to follow the standards that they've put in place. There is actually a mass transit transaction model that's been put in place by the big card brands that really focuses on setting the right experience in place, but also kind of the right risk management, the right management of fraud, the right management kind of various payment scenarios that we're really closely following and evolving towards. I think also important to say that when you're on the public side of this, for us, another really important aspect, or the other kind of half of the holy grail for us, is actually about accessibility and equity. And that's where I think it differs again a little bit from commercial payment industry, because for us, making all of our payment methods available for the banked and the unbanked, for credit cards, for debit cards, for cash, all of the different variations that you can find in the population that we serve is where a lot of our focus is. So the right partnerships, the right products, and kind of variety in products is really important to us in that.
Wow, it's so fascinating. It's a lot of juggling and a lot of challenges that you have to manage. Stephanie, do you have any comments there?
Yeah, so like Taya mentioned in the previous question, really the goal I think would be for transit payments to be as simple as or as easy as paying for a cup of coffee, which everybody really has experience with. It's fast, it's secure. But like I mentioned previously, with all the microtransactions, it starts getting expensive really quickly. So that's where things, you know, fare capping, which is another issue with accessibility, which I'll discuss in just a second, but payment aggregation comes in, talking about, you know, having the payments kind of wait for 3 days or up to $15 before it hits the card networks, so that, you know, you can reduce the amount of transaction fees. And also, like Taya mentioned, you really have to think about the cash preferred customers and how do they get the same experience that, you know, people who are using the credit cards get, and how can they use their phone. You know, you can't take cash and shove it into a phone. That doesn't really work. You know, so we've got partnerships with companies like Incom that have a retail network where you can go and you can add cash to your stored value wallets, or you can pay for tickets using cash there. Also some TVM integrations. I think it's been really important recently with COVID-19 has shown us that, you know, there needs to be a way to board quickly and board distantly. So being able to pay for your fare and activate it and validate it from afar is really important now. And the cash with the accessibility, you know, fare capping is another thing that I think is really important. The benefit of passes is that you can pay up front for a pass. You have an unlimited use for a certain amount of time, a day, a week, a month, etc. But sometimes, you know, not everybody can pay that chunk of money up front. And so the fare capping allows riders to ride daily and continue paying it one-off until they reach a certain threshold, which would be the same equivalent of a daily pass or a weekly pass or a monthly pass. And so really, I think the main holy grail or the main importance for transit is options. And that's really what we're trying to do with Bytemark Bridge, is give as many different payment options as possible, whether that is credit card payments, cash payments, smart cards, purchasing in advance versus just tapping and writing. There's not going to really be, in my opinion, a solution that fits everybody. And so really it's kind of, let's throw as many solutions as we can there so that the riders get what they want, and then the agencies also can, you know, support the throughput that they need.
Wow, that's so fabulous. Can you just, for our audience, Stephanie, clarify TBM integrations that you mentioned?
Yeah, sorry. TVM are ticket vending machines. So yeah, so a lot of times the ticket vending machines, you know, you go, you put your cash in, you get your paper ticket back, which is great for a one-way ticket. It's less good for a monthly ticket or something like that. You don't necessarily want to go stand in line at a ticket vending machine. So doing integrations there where you can actually redeem your ticket on your phone so that you can have a virtual ticket from those machines.
I mean, COVID is driving such a shift in this.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it speaks really well to our relationship with Bytemark. So Bytemark has been in our area, so has been in the GTHA for some time, but not working directly with PRESTO. We started working with Bytemark maybe 3 months ago, and we have a product live in market this week, which I think is just astounding. But that partnership has really been about trying to respond to COVID, and the fact that during the really heavy lockdowns, a lot of our buses in particular were allowing passengers to board at the rear rather than at the front to avoid interaction with the driver. We didn't want people at vending machines because we didn't want them tapping surfaces that could be contaminated. And we essentially just weren't taking payment because we wanted for the city to continue to move. So we formed this relationship, this partnership with Bytemark to really quickly get to market a QR code e-ticket based technology that can be visually inspected. So it's just something that you purchase on your phone. We can continue to allow rear door boarding and allow passengers who don't have PRESTO cards, the cards that we typically use in the city, to have a means of privately, kind of in a self-contained way, paying for transit. So absolutely agree with Stephanie that being adaptable and kind of responding to needs quickly is hugely important for us.
That's fabulous. And I love the whole topic of innovation inspired by or mandated by COVID.
Never waste a good pandemic, right?
Well, exactly. Are there other examples of COVID-inspired innovation that either of you have experienced or done that you want to share?
I can talk to it a little bit. One of the pieces that it's less on the payment side actually, but we're really looking through our digital channels and digital products, we're looking at ways of helping customers feel safer and be aware of safety measures on transit. So in, for example, the planning of journeys, being able to show that on this train route that you're buying a ticket for, it is typically very crowded, or it's typically 40% crowded based on the historical data that we have. And then actually, as you're traveling for services that have real-time data available, the next bus that's coming is jam-packed, but if you wait for the one that's 5 minutes behind it, you'll find a seat. So that kind of helping with safety along with helping with payment has been big for us.
That's fabulous. That's great. Stephanie, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so we have seen a huge push, I think, in three different directions. Like Taya mentioned, the automatic passenger counters and the occupancy information has been something that has never really been important on trip planning or real-time information, and now it's hugely important. So there's a lot of talk about that. And then also pushing away from cash. Previously, there was kind of this idea like, let's get away from cash because of the issues with collecting cash. It's just, you know, it's difficult. Expensive, exactly. But now it's, we need to get away from cash because we need to separate people. We need to allow them to board from the back. But then also, how do you support people who that's their main form of payment? And so we're seeing, you know, a lot of discussion around cash payments and how we can support them without also supporting them. And then also a big push towards mobile apps and ticketing, visual ticketing, like the product that we rolled out with PRESTO, because, you know, you can see those tickets from 6 feet away. That's the goal of them, is they have really large text. That's the point. So you can inspect them from really far away. You can get an app up and running really quickly without any hardware integrations. That's another big issue, is that it's fast. Like Taya mentioned, we started talking like 3 months ago. The app was live in less than 45 days in terms of our end when we were doing the development. And really, how can we get other options up as quick as possible so that people can still ride? I think we saw a lot, you know, Taya mentioned we're not accepting payments, or they weren't accepting payments for a while. A lot of agencies did that, where they just let people ride because it was more important to be able to get people where they needed to go than it was to collect the fares. And so coming up with ways to, you know, they still need to maintain their transit systems. So coming up with ways to collect fares in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, I love that nimbleness, being able to adjust your strategy, and I'm calling them compressed innovation curves. You know, we've seen a lot of that across the industry, but transit, it's fascinating to see what you're doing. I want to look a little bit to the future now and think about mass transit payments and what they might look like in 3 to 5 years. There's so much evolution and innovation happening. Do you have thoughts on what payments in mass transit might look like a number of years from now? Do you want to start us off, Stephanie?
Sure. Well, assuming we're not all having our eyeballs scanned for payments, I think really what we're going to be doing is there's going to be a lot of kind of set it and forget it mentality. How can we pay for transit either once and then, you know, not have to think about it, kind of like automatic bill paying? And how can we ride without having to stop and take things out of our pockets and go stand in line, both at the TVM or at the ticket vending machine and at the buses or the trains, etc. So what kind of validation or contactless validation and payments can we have that, you know, proximity payments, proximity validation? We have a product called AirGate that actually detects, it uses multi-sensors to detect a fare and let you through a gate without you having to take your phone out of your pocket. So I think reducing any sort of barrier, both physical barriers like gates and, you know, figurative barriers like, you know, having to take steps up front or having to remember to do something, I think is what we're going to kind of see. And then also, I think cities, there's been a real big focus on MOS, which is mobility as a service. and incorporating payments for transit with other city services, parking, with on-demand transportation, with other mobility providers like the car shares and the bike shares and the scooters, and really how can cities make a mobility ecosystem that's, you know, friendly not only in terms of payments, but in terms of transit options.
I love this. I'm learning so much about mobility and ecosystems and transit and integration and innovation. Taya, tell us where you think we'll see payments, mass transit payments in the next few years.
I mean, I agree with a lot of what Stephanie said. I think the concept of, like, we call it be in, be out. So rather than tapping in and tapping out of the service, you just are in or out of the service. And we can charge you on that basis without actually requiring you to have to physically engage with equipment or fish things out of your pockets, as Stephanie said. So I think that's a big one. I also think just an area that actually not a lot of people talk about, but I'm really interested in seeing innovation in station equipment and kind of vending equipment. So it's an area that hasn't seen disruption in a really long time. We just have big clunky vending machines, which I think for us, we're looking at how to use those to enable different self-service options, to enable wayfinding, to actually connect with your digital device so that it becomes less about kind of this physical machine, like where you're dropping change and kind of tapping, and more about a way to connect with customers on their journey and connect with their digital channels. So I think that's an interesting one. I think for us, when you look at PRESTO, it really is about just modernizing the payment methods that we offer. So right now, our main payment method is still a smart card, and we're looking at, first of all, moving that smart card to account-based technology and making it accessible through mobile wallets. So being able to load your PRESTO card into your Apple or Google Wallet. We're looking at accepting standard contactless debit credit cards as a means of payment, and e-tickets, kind of that we've now started on that path with Bytemark, and just kind of continuing that modernization of the payment methods that we offer, while always still considering the equity angle and what we do with customers that prefer cash. I'm really interested actually to know when cash will leave our network. We kind of, you know, because we're a public service, we need to support cash for as long as cash is important to voters. But I'm interested in seeing how that progresses over time. I think the other thing to mention for us is this reimagining of our business model. So I hope that in 5 years' time, what looks different in terms of the way that we deliver our services is that it's much less about we build everything and much more about we have this central system that does fair payment processing and kind of fair rule calculation, but we can enable integration to have lots of other services connecting into that, whether it's front-end equipment that's owned by someone else, whether it's a digital channel or product that's owned by someone else, whether it's mass, so connecting to first and last mile type services. So being able to not own and build everything ourselves, but kind of create innovation by opening up to the payment industry and to the mobility industry as both of them evolve.
Yeah, the partnering is a way to open up so many different opportunities and really get into even more niche players who really focus and specialized on delivering certain, you know, value in certain areas. This has been fascinating. I have had the pleasure of traveling to many different cities and have tapped in with Oyster and Octopus and Opal. They all seem to have something to do with, I don't know, natural things and creatures around the world. But can you tell us what cities are doing this really well, and who's kind of leading the pack when it comes to mass transit payments? Any thoughts, Taya?
Sure. I mean, I think it's kind of, it's hard to pick one. I think you've named the big players. If you're thinking about ticketing systems that offer kind of convenience to their customers, it's kind of gone east to west, hasn't it? So, you know, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Singapore, Beijing are all really strong. I lived in London for 15 years, and that's where I started working in transit. I actually worked at Transport for London. And for me, Oyster is just a gold standard of simplicity. It's such a simple solution that you don't really think about, and they've managed, I think, to keep it modern and fresh really well. I think they have I really like their brand. I think their brand kind of, I don't know, is synonymous with London in a lot of ways, which I think is awesome. In terms of kind of, so North America is playing catch up, I think, to an extent in terms of modernizing our systems, but I'm really confident of our direction. I think there's lots of really interesting innovation happening here. In terms of the evolution of mobility as a service and MaaS, that whole ecosystem that Stephanie was mentioning, that came largely out of Scandinavia initially, but it's big everywhere, and I see a lot of that happening in North American cities. So connecting first and last mile services like bike shares, like Uber, as part of your end-to-end journey, with public transit as kind of the core of that end-to-end journey. Another city that we look to is San Francisco, and the reason that it's interesting for us is, like Toronto, it's one of the only other cities that operates kind of a scheme that serves so many different agencies, all with their own fare rules and all with their own kind of nuances and complexities. So being able to manage having one public scheme that serves a whole host of agencies that are all interconnected is something that we look for when we look at where we want to grow.
I love this innovation, and we are in a global village in so many ways, but we haven't quite got there with mass transit in all our big cities around the world. I want to talk a little bit about your careers, and you've both been able to carve out a niche career in a niche industry. Are there tips that you would share with your younger self? Do you want to start with this, Stephanie? I mean, you're
young.
Yeah. Thanks. So many things that I would like to share with my younger self. And some of them, like my much younger self, I think one of the first things is that nobody cares about your GPA. I thought that was going to be really important. And so in college, I was like, I'm going to, do perfectly and really fast. And I really wish I had spent more time, trying out different fields of study and just enjoying it more. I did not expect to end up in transit payments like that. I didn't know that was even a thing that you could, have a career in. And my past careers have been incredibly varied. I worked in baseball card publishing, test preparation, interior design, so none of which I studied. So really just kind of exploring more when I was in college. Also networking, I think that that's something I'm still telling myself and having to remind myself because I'm pretty shy, so it's difficult. But if I look at the jobs that I've had in the past, I haven't gotten a single one from applying, actually. In fact, I started at Bytemark. I had 0 experience in transit, 0 experience in payments, 0 experience in tech. Like I mentioned, I came from baseball cards, quite different. And, but I was introduced to the company by my friend's sister's husband's art opening. I met a woman there. So, really just, you never know who's going to be able to help you and who you're going to be able to help, which is obviously just as important. And then I think finally just really kind of jumping in, the biggest, the best parts of my life have come from things that were terrifying and that I kind of just did. I quit a full-time job to go to France and teach English for $250. I moved to New York without a place to stay or a job. I applied to Cornell because I was bored, but they've all been such huge payoffs. And I think it would have been really easy to be like, I'm not really prepared for that. I don't know what I'm going to get. And what I would have gotten is nowhere. So I think that's also really important.
I love that, taking risks and getting outside your comfort zone and networking. And learning different things in the world and different industries. It's all clearly benefited you. Stephanie, thank you for sharing. Taya, you've had this amazing career and got this amazing specialty with a great team working with you. Tell us, what would you share with your younger self in terms of careers?
Yeah, I mean, some of the same themes. So I entered university with a double major in philosophy and religion, which, and I left with a degree in comparative literature. So I was really about what I'm interested in as opposed to what I'm going to do. And I fell by chance, one of my jobs when I was in university was working as a receptionist at a software company, now huge, called SAP. It was pretty small at the time. And just liked it, just was interested, and never would have pegged myself as being someone that was interested in technology. But kind of like Stephanie, I think for me, it was really about taking the opportunities that presented themselves and then following kind of what really compelled me, which for me has always tended to be change and learning new things and kind of diving into a situation where I've got the opportunity to figure it out and make a difference. So I think definitely following the opportunities that come. Similarly, I kind of moved to Germany for a 6-month secondment when I was in my early 20s and spent the better part of 20 years in Europe. And I guess like that's leading on to the next thing. I think the thing that I realized over time was that while I'm very interested in technology, I am very interested in technology and continue to be, and it's, I've got a lot of experience built up in that space now. What really makes me feel good when I wake up in the morning is to be working on something that makes a difference. So it's the combination of kind of the field that I'm in, technology and payment and all of that kind of stuff, but also really contributing to something that I see and feel in my community and I feel good about. For me, is the difference between a job I really enjoy and a job where I'm just coming in every day. And then the other one, now that I'm old and wizened, is go to sleep, is chill out. That's, I think, something that's really come for me over time, is the realization that the problem will still be there tomorrow, and actually there also might be a solution there tomorrow, and I might get something out of dropping the problem and then attacking it in a fresh way the next day. And just kind of giving yourself the space for that, I think, is really important.
I love these words of wisdom. Thank you for sharing both. I have learned so much in this discussion, both about mass transit and payments, but also about careers and giving ourselves permission to relax and enjoy and explore and learn and be innovative and not beat ourselves up for not getting everything done today, because there's always tomorrow. But I love Taya's background in philosophy and religion, and now she's in mass transit payments and technology. That's awesome. And Stephanie coming from baseball cards to mass transit payments, that's pretty cool. So I think both of you have come at this from really different walks of life and areas of expertise, and look at what an amazing impact you're making on the world. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This has been a great discussion. I'm going to encourage our audience to join us for this and other Pause for Payments episodes, and look forward to speaking with you all soon. Take care.